On a lonely highway, he thought it would be just another routine stop. But the moment she calmly handed him her ID, his whole world collapsed because the woman he disrespected wasn't just anyone. She was a US Army colonel with the power to end his career in one phone call. Colonel Maya Richardson guided her silver Lexus with steady precision. On the passenger seat rested her crisp uniform jacket, folded neatly beside a leather briefcase. She looked like any professional woman heading home. Except Maya wasn't just anyone. She was a US Army colonel, decorated and respected, though at that moment no one on the highway knew it. Behind her, flashing red and blue lights sliced through traffic. A police siren wailed. Maya glanced at her speedometer, 58 in a 60 zone. No tail light out. No erratic driving. Still, she pulled calmly onto the shoulder, rolled down her window and waited. Out of the cruiser stepped Officer Brad Coleman, broad-shouldered, sunglasses fixed, his walk carrying the weight of unchecked authority. He didn't greet her, didn't explain. His voice came sharp, commanding license and registration. Now, Maya kept her composure. "Of course, officer, may I ask why I was stopped?" Coleman leaned closer, scanning her face, her car, and the folded jacket on the seat. His jaw tightened. "Step out of the vehicle." Maya hesitated. "Is there a problem?" He placed a hand on his holster. "Don't make me repeat myself." She opened the door, heels clicking against the hot pavement. Traffic slowed, some drivers pointing phones to record. Coleman grabbed her arm, rougher than necessary, dragging her a step closer to his cruiser. Maya's purse slipped slightly, her military ID badge glinting in the sunlight. Coleman didn't see it. Her eyes locked on his, steady and unflinching. "Officer, you're making a mistake you won't forget." Coleman smirked. "Lady, the only mistake here is yours." The balance of power had just shifted. He just didn't know it yet. The hum of traffic filled the tense silence as Colonel Maya Richardson stood by a Lexus, her hands steady at her sides. Her calmness only seemed to irritate Officer Brad Coleman further. He towered over her, squinting beneath his sunglasses, his posture screaming arrogance. "You got attitude," Coleman sneered, circling her like a predator sizing up prey. "What's a woman like you driving a Lexus for? Doesn't add up. Maybe I should check if this car's even yours." Maya's voice was firm, clipped, the way she addressed young soldiers under her command. "My registration will show the car is legally mine, officer, and I don't appreciate baseless accusations." Coleman let out a mocking laugh. "Oh, so now you're telling me how to do my job?" He gestured toward the cruiser. "Hands on the hood, now." A couple of cars slowed down again, phones rising discreetly to capture the unfolding scene. Coleman noticed and turned slightly, blocking the angle of one phone with his body. Still, the lenses stayed trained on him, recording every move. Maya exhaled slowly, keeping her composure. Inside, her training screamed at her, "Stay controlled. Don't escalate. Let him dig his own grave. I'm complying with your requests," she said calmly, "but you're stepping over a line." Coleman slammed his palm against the hood of his cruiser. "The only line here is the one I draw." His voice rose, echoing over the highway noise. Maya stood still, unshaken. Her silence carried more weight than any argument. Coleman mistook it for weakness, smirking again. "Yeah, thought so," he said smugly. "You people always think you can outsmart the law." But Maya's eyes never wavered. She knew the storm was building, and when it broke, Coleman's arrogance would collapse in front of everyone watching. The world was about to learn who she truly was. The warm wind swept across the highway, carrying the low rumble of engines and the occasional honk from passing cars. Colonel Maya Richardson stood steady against the force of Officer Brad Coleman's hostility. Her discipline, forged in combat zones far more dangerous than this asphalt battlefield, kept her grounded. Coleman leaned closer, his voice a low growl meant only for her. "You better learn your place. Out here, I'm the one in charge. Doesn't matter who you think you are." Maya's gaze was unflinching. She spoke evenly, her voice carrying the calm weight of authority. "Officer Coleman, I'll say this once. You're making a decision that could cost you dearly. I advise you to reconsider your tone and your actions." Coleman let out a harsh laugh, loud enough for onlookers to hear. "Is that a threat?" he barked, spreading his arms dramatically as if inviting the recording phones to catch his defiance. "Because let me tell you something, lady. Nobody threatens me. Not here. Not ever." Maya didn't flinch. "It's not a threat. It's a warning. One you'll wish you had taken seriously." For the first time, Coleman's confidence wavered just slightly. Something in her composure, in the way she carried herself, didn't match the profile of the drivers he usually bullied. He shoved the thought aside, puffing his chest. "Save your speeches. You're one step away from cuffs." From the corner of her eye, Maya noticed two young bystanders whispering, their cameras pointed squarely at Coleman. The truth was being captured, every word, every gesture. Coleman leaned in again, lowering his voice. "Nobody's going to believe you over me. I wear the badge. That's all that matters." Maya's lips curved into the faintest trace of a smile. "You're wrong. The truth always outranks the badge," Coleman scoffed, blind to the storm forming around him. The flashing red and blue lights painted the scene in harsh strokes, catching the attention of more and more passing drivers. Phones were out. Some slowed down just enough to capture what was happening, the tension between Colonel Maya Richardson and Officer Brad Coleman, crystallizing into a public spectacle. Coleman stepped back, his hand brushing the pair of cuffs on his belt. His smirk returned, sharper than before. "You think you're tough, huh? Think you can outtalk me? I've put plenty of people in cuffs for less." Maya kept her eyes locked on him, her voice calm, deliberate. "And how many of them were guilty only of looking like me?" The question landed heavy. Coleman's jaw tightened. He glanced toward the bystanders, realizing her words carried weight beyond their argument. Words now etched forever on the recordings. "Watch it," he snapped. "I could call backup and have you on the ground in minutes." Maya took one slow step closer, her posture regal, unshaken. "And when your backup arrives, you'll have to answer for why you harassed a law-abiding citizen on baseless suspicion. Are you prepared for that, Officer Coleman?" Her tone wasn't a plea, it was a challenge, the kind that demanded respect. But Coleman, blinded by pride, doubled down. "I don't answer to you," he barked. "I answer to the law, and right now the law says you're suspicious." Maya tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing. "No, officer. Right now, the law is watching you. The people are watching you. And the truth has a way of catching up faster than you expect." For a split second, Coleman faltered, uncertainty flickering across his face. But then his pride reared back, louder than reason. He grabbed his radio, muttering into it for backup. Maya inhaled deeply, the calm before the storm. She knew the moment of reckoning was coming. And when it arrived, Coleman's world would collapse under its weight. Minutes later, the distant wail of another siren pierced through the heavy silence on the highway. Colonel Maya Richardson stood exactly where she had been, calm, poised, her arms crossed behind her back like a soldier at ease. Officer Brad Coleman, on the other hand, paced restlessly, trying to look in control while doubt quietly gnawed at the edges of his authority. A second police cruiser pulled up. Two officers stepped out, Officer Jenkins, a younger recruit still learning the ropes, and Sergeant Mike Harris, a broad, seasoned cop with a skeptical gaze. The moment Harris saw the scene, Coleman towering over an unarmed woman while multiple phones recorded, his gut told him something was off. "What's going on here, Brad?" Harris asked, keeping his tone neutral. Coleman straightened up. "Suspicious driver, refused to cooperate. I'm detaining her until we get this sorted." Harris turned to Maya. "Ma'am, do you have ID?" Before Maya could speak, Coleman snapped. "She already gave me attitude. Don't let her fool you." "Brad," Harris interrupted, a hint of warning in his tone. "Let her answer." Maya calmly reached into her purse and pulled out her wallet. With slow, deliberate movements, she handed over her driver's license and registration. Then, almost as an afterthought, she set down a slim black leather case beside them. The sunlight caught the edge of the gold emblem embossed on it, U.S. Department of Defense. Harris's eyes flickered to it, and then back to Maya. Something in her bearing, the precision of her movements, the quiet command in her tone, it all clicked. "Ma'am," he asked carefully, "are you military?" Coleman scoffed. "Oh, please, she's bluffing." Maya's gaze turned cold. "You're about to find out just how wrong you are, Officer Coleman." And this time, the entire highway would witness it. The wind carried the faint hum of traffic as tension thickened around the small group on the highway shoulder. Sergeant Harris glanced again at the black leather case lying on the hood of the Lexus. The gold insignia gleamed, unmistakable to anyone who had served. "Brad," Harris said slowly, his voice low, "stand down for a minute." Officer Brad Coleman frowned, irritation flashing in his eyes. "What do you mean, stand down? She's being uncooperative." "No," Harris interrupted, his tone firmer now. "She's being respectful. You're the one raising your voice." Coleman's jaw tightened, but Maya's silence cut through louder than any argument. She reached forward and flipped open the leather case. Inside was a pristine military identification card, her name printed clearly above a seal that shimmered under the sun, Colonel Maya Richardson, United States Army. The moment froze in time. Even the sound of passing cars seemed to dull. Harris's eyes widened slightly. He took a step back out of instinctive respect. Coleman's smirk faltered. "Wait, what?" Maya's voice was quiet but commanding. "I tried to warn you, Officer Coleman. I asked for professionalism. I expected courtesy. Instead, you treated me like a criminal." Coleman's mouth opened, but no words came out. The young officer, Jenkins, swallowed hard, lowering his gaze. He'd never seen someone control a moment so effortlessly, without raising her voice, without moving an inch. Harris cleared his throat, lowering his hand from his holster. "Ma'am, I didn't realize who you were. Please accept my apologies on behalf of the department." Maya didn't respond immediately. Her eyes were still on Coleman. "Rank doesn't excuse injustice, Sergeant," she said softly. "It only exposes it." Coleman looked pale now, his authority crumbling with every word. And the cameras kept rolling. The world was about to witness accountability in real time. By now, the shoulder of the highway had turned into an impromptu stage. Cars slowed, drivers rolled down their windows, and the glow of phone screens shimmered in the sunlight as dozens of bystanders recorded. The hashtag moment was being born in real time, and Colonel Maya Richardson stood at its center, unbothered, resolute. Officer Brad Coleman shifted uneasily. The arrogance that had once defined his stance was leaking away, replaced by visible discomfort. "Look, this doesn't have to go viral," he muttered, glancing around as people shouted, "Let her speak!" "And we're filming everything." Maya's voice remained calm but resonant. "It already has, Officer Coleman. What happens next is entirely up to you." Sergeant Harris shot Coleman a warning look. "Brad, you better stop talking before you dig yourself deeper." But Coleman, flustered and angry, couldn't stop himself. She didn't identify herself earlier. How was I supposed to know? Maya took a step closer, her eyes sharp. "You didn't ask. You assumed. You profiled. You disrespected." Her words landed like precision strikes, deliberate, undeniable. A murmur rippled through the small crowd. A man shouted, "She's a colonel, man! You just harassed a soldier!" Coleman's hands twitched at his sides. "This is ridiculous," he snapped, trying to mask his panic. "I was just doing my job." Maya tilted her head, calm and cutting. "Then maybe you should learn what your job really is. To serve and protect, not to judge and control." Harris exhaled, rubbing his temples. "Brad, step back. Right now." The command had finality in it. Coleman froze, realizing even his own colleague was turning against him. The authority he'd wielded like a weapon moments ago now hung useless at his side. Maya stood tall, her presence filling the space with quiet power. "It's over, Officer Coleman," she said evenly. "But your lesson is just beginning." And the internet would make sure he never forgot it. The tension was electric. Every pair of eyes on the highway locked on Colonel Maya Richardson, her calm demeanor standing in stark contrast to Officer Brad Coleman's unraveling composure. The flashing lights reflected off her badge as she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Coleman instinctively stepped forward. "Hey, you can't—" Maya raised a hand, silencing him with one motion. "I'm making a call," she said firmly, "to ensure accountability." Coleman hesitated, watching as she scrolled to a contact labeled Brigadier General L. Warren, Pentagon Liaison. His throat went dry. "You're bluffing," he muttered, his voice weak. But the phone was already ringing, its speaker loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Within seconds, a crisp, commanding voice answered. "Colonel Richardson, you're on speaker. Everything all right, ma'am?" The crowd quieted instantly. "Yes, General," Maya replied evenly, her tone professional. "I've been detained without cause by an officer of the Houston Police Department. I've identified myself and been treated with disrespect in full public view." The General's voice sharpened. "Name of the officer?" Coleman's mouth dropped open. Harris turned toward him, wide-eyed. "Officer Brad Coleman," Maya said clearly. "Badge number 427. On the other end, a pause. Then, understood. You'll be contacted by Internal Affairs within the hour. Please remain at the scene, Colonel. We'll handle the rest." Maya ended the call, her phone still glowing in her hand. Coleman's face turned pale, sweat forming at his temple. "What did you just do?" he stammered. "I did what I was trained to do," she replied coldly. I reported a breach of conduct. Harris swallowed hard. Brad, you're done. The crowd erupted, some cheering, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Coleman's arrogance had evaporated completely. Maya turned toward him one last time. Next time you pull someone over, Officer Coleman, try seeing a human being before you see a color. And in that moment, justice had a voice, and the world was listening. The crowd parted as another black and white cruiser pulled up, its siren fading into the heavy stillness. Out stepped Chief Harold Daniels, a tall, broad man in his 50s whose grey hair and stern expression carried decades of command. One glance at the scene, the recording bystanders, the trembling officer Brad Coleman, and the composed Colonel Maya Richardson, told him everything he needed to know. "Officer Coleman," he barked, voice deep and authoritative. "Step away from the colonel. Now." Coleman froze. "Chief, I can explain." "Don't," Daniels interrupted sharply. "I've already received 3 calls in the last 5 minutes, one from Internal Affairs and another from the Pentagon. Do you have any idea what kind of storm you've just created?" The words hit like a gavel. Coleman's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Maya remained silent, watching. Her face was calm, unreadable, yet her posture spoke volumes, dignity restrained behind discipline. Daniels turned toward her, removing his cap with quiet respect. "Colonel Richardson, I want to personally apologize for this officer's conduct. This department holds deep respect for the armed forces. What happened here does not reflect our values." Maya gave a curt nod. "Respect starts with action, Chief, not words." The crowd murmured in agreement. Phones continued recording as Coleman stood red-faced, his career unraveling under the weight of accountability. Daniels motioned to Harris. "Escort him back to the station. He's suspended effective immediately." Harris hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, Chief." He turned to Coleman, voice heavy. "Let's go, Brad." Coleman's shoulders slumped. He looked at Maya, not with arrogance anymore, but shame. "I didn't know," he mumbled. Maya finally met his eyes. "That's the problem," she said softly. "You never tried to—" As Harris led him away, Daniels faced Maya again. "Would you be willing to come to the station later, ma'am? We'll ensure your statement is handled with full respect." "I will," she said, stepping back toward her car. "But I expect change, not just paperwork." And as the chief watched her drive off, he knew the world had just witnessed a lesson the badge alone couldn't teach. By nightfall, the video had already hit 1 million views. Uploaded by a passing driver, the footage showed every second, from Officer Brad Coleman's first shout to Colonel Maya Richardson's calm reveal of her U.S. Army credentials. The caption read, "Racist cop pulls over Army colonel, instantly regrets it." News outlets picked it up within hours. Hashtags flooded social media. Hashtag Colonel Richardson. Hashtag respect the uniform. Hashtag accountability in action. Coleman's name was everywhere, and not in the way he'd ever imagined. At home, he sat on his couch in silence, the TV blaring a headline that burned through his pride. "Houston officer suspended after detaining black U.S. Army colonel without cause." His phone buzzed non-stop, reporters, messages, and angry voicemails. His wife sat in the corner, speechless, while his own reflection in the darkened screen stared back, stripped of the authority he once abused. Meanwhile, Maya sat in her quiet apartment, sipping tea as the world reacted. Her phone buzzed too, but with messages of gratitude, respect, and support from veterans, soldiers, and civilians alike. One message stood out from Brigadier General L. Warren, handled with grace, Colonel. "The Pentagon has taken notice. Expect a formal commendation for professionalism under pressure." Maya smiled faintly. She hadn't done it for praise. She did it because silence, in the face of injustice, was never an option. The next morning, the Houston Police Department issued a public statement. Chief Harold Daniels stood before cameras, somber and direct, effective immediately. "Officer Brad Coleman has been terminated following a full review. Our department is implementing mandatory bias and conduct training across all divisions." Reporters shouted questions, flashes popping like fireworks. But the headline had already written itself. One woman's dignity changed an entire department. And somewhere in the city, Maya quietly put her uniform back on, because her fight and her message had only just begun. Colonel Maya Richardson stood at the center of the small press conference room, the cameras flashing like 1,000 tiny storms. The atmosphere was thick with tension and disbelief. She wasn't wearing her uniform today, only a simple black blazer with the U.S. flag pinned to her chest. Her voice was steady, yet carried the weight of generations. Yesterday, she began, I was pulled over by an officer who judged me before he even spoke to me, not because I broke a law, but because of the color of my skin. This isn't just about me, it's about the thousands of voices silenced by fear, shame, or injustice. Reporters leaned forward, their pens racing. She continued, I serve this country to protect everyone, including those who see me as less than human. But I won't let uniform or title hide the truth. Racism still lives in the systems we trust. In the back of the room, Chief Daniels watched with arms crossed, his face unreadable. After a pause, he approached the mic and said, The department has failed her, and many others. That failure ends today. Officer Grant, sitting quietly near the side, felt his chest tighten. He knew she wasn't just speaking to the cameras, she was speaking to him. He lowered his head as tears welled up. Outside, people gathered with signs reading Justice for All and We See You, Colonel Richardson. The story had gone viral, uniting citizens across states. When Maya stepped off the podium, a young girl approached her, eyes shining with admiration. Ma'am, she whispered, I want to be like you one day. Maya smiled, resting a hand on the girl's shoulder. Then promise me this, she said softly, never let anyone tell you what you can't be. Officer Grant sat in the dimly lit interrogation room, his badge and gun already surrendered. The silence pressed heavy against him. Across the table sat Internal Affairs investigator Captain Lisa Monroe, her calm demeanor hiding years of disappointment in cases just like this one. Officer Grant, she began, flipping open her notepad. You've been with the department for 11 years, commendations, community service awards, and now this. Care to explain what happened? He swallowed hard. I made a mistake, he said quietly. I saw her car, saw her, and I reacted. I didn't think. Lisa leaned forward. You just profiled her. You pulled over a decorated U.S. Army colonel because you assumed she didn't belong in that car, that neighborhood, that world. Grant's voice broke. I didn't know who she was. I swear I didn't mean to disrespect her. That's the problem, Lisa replied. You shouldn't have to know someone's rank to respect them. He looked down at his trembling hands. The weight of what he'd done hit him harder than any punishment could. He'd humiliated a woman who'd spent her life defending the very freedoms he'd taken for granted. Meanwhile, in another office, Chief Daniels reviewed the department's statement. It called for immediate suspension, mandatory retraining, and public apology. He rubbed his temples, not because he disagreed, but because he knew this was only one battle in a much larger war against systemic bias. Outside the station, protesters were still chanting Maya's name. The city had become a mirror reflecting its own fractured truth. Grant whispered, almost to himself, I thought the uniform made me the protector. Now I realize I was the threat. Lisa closed her notebook. Then maybe, Officer Grant, it's time to decide what kind of man you'll be after this. Weeks had passed since the incident, but its echoes still rippled across the nation. News stations replayed the footage, social media buzzed with debates, and schools used Colonel Maya Richardson's speech as a teaching moment. The world had seen her grace under fire, and the fall of a man who once thought his badge made him invincible. Officer Grant stood outside the community center, now dressed not in uniform but in a simple grey shirt. In his hands he held a folder labeled Volunteer Outreach Program. It was his choice, part of his reinstatement condition, but deep down he wasn't there to regain his job. He was there to regain his humanity. Inside, Maya was speaking to a group of teenagers, mostly kids of color, their faces bright with hope and pain mixed together. Her words filled the room like sunlight breaking through clouds. You will be judged unfairly, she said, but never let someone else's ignorance define your worth. When she finished, she noticed Grant standing quietly near the doorway. The room went still. He approached slowly, removing his cap. Colonel Richardson, he said softly, I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to thank you for showing me who I really was, and who I still have a chance to be. Maya studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Accountability is the first step. Change is the second. Don't waste it. Outside, the sunset painted the sky in amber and gold, a symbol, perhaps, of something ending and something new beginning. As Maya watched Grant help kids pack up chairs and carry supplies, she felt a quiet peace. Justice wasn't always loud. Sometimes it looked like a man choosing to be better, and a woman refusing to stay silent. The world had seen what prejudice could destroy. Now, it was seeing what truth could rebuild.